And then we'll ask, do you remember your first day of talking to customers, whether
Yeah.
with ad
And
or,
that,
and they'll say
oh,
yes, no question. Well, some will
if they
say, I
didn't
remember
black
the
it out.
day. Yeah, I remember the day, but I blacked out the whole experience. I blocked it. I don't want to remember
Yeah.
it. What should be driving the onboarding process for companies?
Yeah. In high volume contact center, it should still be the employee experience. It should be the driver. And that's what we've discovered. But we get, we've been in the industry many years, and we get that it's kind of a process, and there's a whole stress on making sure that somebody is in the seat and ready to take calls, and you have enough people to take all of the calls that are coming in.
We just
That,
talked to
yeah,
75, 76 executives and asked them what their onboarding process looks like. And they're saying, on average, they're losing about 50% of their folks within the first 90 days.
yeah. So why do you think that's
That's
happening
huge.
now?
Yeah. So I think what we're finding is that it's always been, as you mentioned, a challenge. It's always been difficult to get through that process of onboarding. But I think now it's even higher because what drives people to leave during the onboarding process is when their stress and anxiety goes beyond the limit that they're willing to accept
Yeah,
in a job.
yeah, and they're already in a stressful job.
They're
I
starting the
mean,
job flat out, higher stress from everything outside the job than they did before. And whatever the company adds during the onboarding process just makes them say it's too much. That's what we found through
yeah,
focus groups and data.
yeah, and what's interesting is what they told us was, okay, I was recruited by somebody, and I don't probably see that person again. And I come day one, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what to do, but I'm with a bunch of other people, and then I'm told, hey, here are all the things that are going to get you fired. Here's all the paperwork. Here's how you set up your payments. Here's how you set up your IT. You need access, to systems, all of that. And then you just keep getting past until you finally get to a training at some point. And then it's like, okay, here's what we're doing. And then you go to nesting. And then it's probably you don't know who you're working for and who your team is until, you hit production. And it's a pretty stressful process, is what they've told us.
Yeah, if your goal is to reduce stress and anxiety for people, or at least hold it from, going over the limit, that's probably not going to do it. That process you described, but it
Yeah,
is interesting, isn't it? How people there are two ways to view the onboarding process. One is from the company perspective, and one is from the employee perspective.
yeah,
From a company perspective, it's a process. And there are things that have to get done in the process. As you mentioned,
absolutely.
there are all these things.
Yeah,
What's interesting to me is as we work with companies from the company process perspective, their perspective, they aren't really focused necessarily on the employee experience from what we would see as a sense of joy and meaningfulness from the job. It's how do I get you
sure.
trained? How do I get you competent? How do I make you
Correct.
comfortable? How do I do all these things so you then will produce what we need you to produce
Yeah.
on the phones, right?
Don't ask me to do everything and that too,
Right.
but it's interesting. And we love when we get, both the employees and then the management in the room, and they have these discussions, and it's like, in a sense, we can do both. We can. Um, and another thing that really has thrown a wrench into all of this is now when you take a look at if I'm going to be onboarding people remotely, and the challenge there that we've heard is, well, at least if I was in a center, I have coworkers with me through this challenging process that I can lean on for emotional support, for encouragement, for also knowledge. I can turn and say, I don't want to ask a dumb question, but I'll ask you. And you figure it out together. Well, when you're getting onboarded remotely, you don't really have those employee relationships. So, really, what's so much more important is this supervisor being the face of the company. And if they're not getting involved until after production, wow, that's really challenging, because who's looking out for you? Who's checking in with you, making sure you're getting, everything you need, things are okay, someone to ask questions with, So once again, there's other things that have happened to make it more challenging. But once again, the opportunity is, if you can reduce that stress level, and the excitement we see is really people come into companies with high excitement and this high level of meaningful work. And how do you maintain that through the process?
When we ask people, do you remember your first day of work? Do you recall in our focus groups? What's their answer usually?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember my first day of work.
And then we ask them, do you remember your 23rd day at work? And the answer is usually no, not at all. And then we'll ask, do you remember your first day of talking to customers, whether
and
they'll say yes, no question. Well, some will say, I remember the day. Yeah, I remember the day, but I blacked out the whole experience. I blocked it. I don't want to remember it. And the reason people remember their first day of work and they remember their first day of taking calls is because both of those days invoke fight or flight responses in ourselves, in which we're trying to determine whether we should literally run away from the job or stay in it and push through it. So those are critical moments. And when you talk about having nobody there to support you, it isn't just support you from a process that you can chat with them. It isn't support you, but it's emotionally supporting you through those difficult moments. Better yet, I wonder how we can work on these processes as part of the challenge of employee experience to reduce the stress and anxiety points. Why do we have to have these hurdles where it becomes almost like a rite of passage to make it through your first call?
We ask the question, what do you want people to feel? What do you want the employees to feel? Oh, well, we want them to feel like they're welcomed and that they're going to get the support they need, and they're going to be ready for when the time comes. And it's like, yes, that is a good approach when you start adopting that mindset. So talk to the employees about what is going to make them feel that way.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times we focus heavily on we're not training the right methods, or we're not using the right techniques in training. We're not giving them enough knowledge and all of that kind of thing. And that might be the case for some companies, but most of the companies, people are going to learn the job either through training or on the job. I think what we're really after here is that culture, that feel, that connection you have, that you're being supported, that you, as you said, welcomed, wanted, and valued through this whole process that you go in. That's what I think that we all want as employees.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, thanks for watching. And once again, please like, subscribe, and bring others into this great contact center challenge and this journey that we're on. And until next time, take care.
Take care.